Go ahead.
Good. Okay. Good evening, members of council. Good evening, staff, and anyone who is watching this either live or in the recorded version. I'll call our council meeting of April 12th to order. First on the agenda tonight is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act, and this has to do with two zoning bylaws as the result of a consent of severances. So I'm going to turn this over to Ken, and Ken can walk us through the reports. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I'll start with the preamble. The following is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment held under Section 34 of the Planning Act. If a person or public body that would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision, Township of Otonabee-South, Monaghan, to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Otonabee-South, Monaghan before the bylaws passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Otonabee-South, Monaghan before the bylaws passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Notification for this application was circulated to all required agencies and landowners within 120 meters of the subject property at least 20 days prior to this meeting in accordance with the applicable Planning Act regulations. Notification was also posted on the township website. So our first item is zoning bylaw amendment Z-05-21 for the lands addressed 271 Potash Street. This is zoning bylaw amendment for a condition of consent for consent file B-56-19. Purpose of this application is to rezone the severed lands from the rural zone to the rural residential zone to accommodate the lot frontage and lot area of the severed lot. The area of the severed lands is 0.4 hectares and the lot frontage along Potash Street is 73 meters. Relatively straightforward application. If there are any questions from council, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ken. Yes, this is a condition of a consent that we've already approved. Are there any questions from members of council to our planner on this report? Seeing none, this is a public meeting. Is there anybody at this meeting tonight that would like to speak in support of the application? Jamie, go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Taylor and Council. I'm just representing the Elmhurst on these applications. So if there are any questions or opposition, I would be happy to address it if needed.
And sorry, Jamie, just for the record, could you please state your name and address?
Yes, correct. It's Jamie Hofling, and my address is 357 Wingle Road in Palmer Rapids, Ontario.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So is there anybody there who wishes to speak in support of the application? And as Jamie has said, the applicant's agent is here to answer any questions. I'm not seeing any hands or hearing any voices. Is there anyone at this public meeting tonight who wishes to speak in opposition to the application or to seek clarification? Again, I'm not hearing or seeing anything. Members of council prepared to make a decision at this time. Councillor Powers, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to approve the zoning bylaw amendment and move it to the bylaw section of our meeting.
Very good. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Allen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving down to the next application, Ken.
Okay, our second item is zoning bylaw amendment file number Z-06-21. These lands have no civic address, but they are located on the western side of Potash Street of Elm Grove Road. This is another rezoning application for a condition of consent for file B-75-19. The purpose of this rezoning application is rezone the severed lot from the rural zone to the rural residential zone to meet the requirements of the lot frontage and lot area. of the severed lot. The area of the severed lands are 0.4 hectares with a lot frontage along Potash Street of 73 meters. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions to our planner on this one? Seeing none. Again, a public meeting. Anybody in attendance or listening that would like to speak in support of the application? Seeing nothing or hearing nothing, is there anybody that would like to speak in opposition to the application or to seek more information? And I'm seeing and hearing nothing. Okay. Is council prepared to make a decision? Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to concur with the zoning bylaw amendment recommendation and refer it to the bylaw section of our meeting.
Very good. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Allen. All in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
I think that's it for the public meeting tonight. So could I please get a motion to adjourn the public meeting? I'm seeing Howie and Powers. All in favor? That is carried. We are adjourned. Okay, we'll just take a moment to switch screens and get our regular council meeting agenda up. Heather, this is being recorded, correct?
Yes, it is, Mayor Taylor.
I think usually at the start, there's a voice says this meeting is now being recorded, and I never heard that come up.
It says recording on mine, so I'm hopefully it's
Okay.
working.
Okay, no, I'm sure it is. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, if council is all set, then I will call our regular council meeting to order. I have nothing to announce except that the situation locally and provincially is really, really dire with regards to COVID. And boy, we really need to adhere to all of the recommendations that we have in front of us. It's sound advice, and we have got to continue to take this seriously and try to get this turned around. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Are there any disclosures tonight with regards to any of the issues that will be dealing with? Councillor Powers, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Yes, I'd like to disclose pecuniary interest related to item, I believe it's 8.2, the organics facility update, as I am employed by the city of Peterborough.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Powers. And you have filled in the necessary paperwork for the clerk. Okay. Anybody else? Seeing nothing, we'll move on now. Are there any additions or deletions to our agenda? Can I have a motion, please, that we adopt this agenda for tonight's meeting? Councillor Allen, Councillor Howie, all in favor? That is carried. This is the agenda we will follow. You've got four sets of minutes, actually, Council, from two separate meetings. If you have any questions on any of them, please direct it to the date and which particular meeting it was. Is there anything that Council would like to pull out on these minutes? Seeing nothing, could I have a motion, please, that we approve these minutes for the regular and public meetings of March 8th, the regular and public meeting of March 22nd? Deputy Clerk has moved that. Councillor Howie has seconded it. All in favor? Those minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Okay, minutes of committees and boards. We had a roads committee meeting on March 2nd. So we will deal with that next. Heather Harold wasn't part of this meeting, so it's kind of difficult for him. Greg, do you want to just summarize this, or Heather, how do you want to deal with this?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, and between Heather and I see Harold's on the screen here, so he can, if he has any, he's the recipient of these particular recommendations that are coming forward. I guess part of it is I hope that we have a bit of a time crunch, Mr. Mayor, and I know that MPP Passini has a bit of a time crunch on his end. But I'm not sure how much comment there's going to take place about these different recommendations of the roads committee. And
well, why don't we, with council's endorsement, why don't we just defer this to after the delegations, and then we'll just switch the agenda around to move into delegations first. Is council agreeable to that? Okay. All right. So we're going to skip down now to delegations. And first we have our MPP, Dave Pacini, in attendance. Dave, it's great to see you. Welcome. I think you want to bring an update on the Ontario budget, and I'm sure there's some other things.
Yeah, thanks very much, Your Worship, Mayor Taylor. Appreciate the opportunity to present to Council today. I know everybody is working exceptionally hard during these difficult times to maintain quality service delivery to the residents that we represent. And I just want to thank you, staff, and everyone for all of the ongoing work that you're doing, Council, staff, and you, Your Worship. I know our meetings, I very much value our bi-weekly updates just to, to try and keep us all on the same page. So with that, I'll just dive right in. Obviously, the first and foremost thing issue, and you already alluded to it, is the severity of the VOCs, or variants of concern, in the province of Ontario. We've seen over a 4-day span over a 22% increase in hospitalizations and a dramatic increase in ICU bed admittance. And why this is concerning is the variants are spreading faster. They're targeting those that are much younger. And just to give you a sense of the gravity, and I believe I already said this to you, Mayor Taylor, but over a 24-hour span, we had as many people admitted onto ICU as we did at the entire new capacity of the Mackenzie Vaughan Hospital that the province built through COVID-19 and through the last few years. So just to put it in perspective, the severity and why that matters when you see something like, oh, 25 people went in a 24-hour span. Yeah, 25 people in a population. First of all, the increase in numbers on our ICU is very alarming. But secondly, it's the healthcare professionals and the expertise that need to go into caring for someone within ICU. It's overwhelming. These are just limited resources and capacity that we have. Now, we've already invested to increase that capacity. We see a number of new healthcare professionals coming online, but it still is to intubate and to put someone into an ICU, God forbid you end up on a ventilator, requires not only space and room, but significant healthcare professional capacity. So this is the concern that we're seeing, and that the effect that this is having on everything else, because car accidents don't stop, because ATV incidents don't stop, because tragically issues of domestic violence don't stop. So we have to have a healthcare system there for Ontarians when they need it. So I just wanted to address that. Obviously, the very difficult decision to close schools and monitor the situation following March break. Again, I mean, I think we have to act decisively, and there's not, I wish we had a crystal ball. I think we all do. But in absence of that, you have to act decisively. And I do think it's worth noting that Ontario right now, as compared to comparator provinces across Canada, we have the lowest spread of variants of concern and of COVID writ large per capita in the country. And that speaks to being proactive, to keeping our schools safe, to acting decisively as a government. And what's the alternative? Tragically, if we were looking at the flip side of that, if Ontario led the nation in cases and or, God forbid, far more tragic outcomes, it would be far more grim conversation we're having. Nonetheless, it is still very, very difficult because these decisions impact people, impact lives, impact the people we represent. So I just wanted to lead with that. I'd be out of tune if not addressing some of the COVID things off the bat. Just to speak to the budget and to a couple things, because the business of governing continues to go on. And I did want to address some important investments and important things in the budget that will affect our community here. So on March 24th, the budget was introduced. It talks to really protecting two things: our health and our economy, because you can't have a healthy economy without healthy people. The regional opportunities, a couple of things that I'm really excited to elaborate on, and really this is about a Q&A, but the Regional Opportunities Investment Tax Credit. This is a 20% tax credit for regional opportunities investments, only targeting specific regions of this province, of which our region is one. This would be available for eligible expenditures in excess of $50,000 and up to $50,000 for example, a property that becomes available for use in a specific taxation year. So for example, on a $500,000 investment, you'd have a tax credit of 100,000, just to really incentivize. If I think to local examples, albeit not in OSM, but a recent one that comes to mind in the riding that I represent is Baxter's Bakery and their investment that they made in Cobourg to really incentivize them. They could go anywhere, but why did they choose rural investment is because of measures like that. You think to the Dart a plant that left Campbellford tragically as a result of systemic decisions by previous governments over decades that led to a fleeing of manufacturing from this province. Fast forward to today, more people employed in manufacturing in the depths of COVID than when we first took government. And also, if you look to investments like these, like the Rural Opportunities Tax Credit, you see a new plant coming in to these lands that were otherwise vacant before. And that means new jobs, that means increased taxation for the municipality. These are the sorts of things that we expect to continue to see as a result of those measures. Tourism and hospitality, ministers often said it will be the first, the hardest hit and the longest to recover. Cognizant of that, in addition to the Ontario Small Business Supports Grant, which was doubled in the budget, which thousands of small businesses have benefited from. We've been reaching out to businesses in Keene and the surrounding area, letting them know about this important support for small business, but we've zeroed in on a tourism and hospitality small business support grant. And that was, if there's ever any doubt about why a dialogue and a two-way street to politics is important, this is a great example. Hotels, motels, travel agencies, water parks, hunting and fishing camps, RV camp destinations, children's overnight camps. These are all things that were identified by constituents as needing targeted additional supports, which is why there is an additional targeted support for the Tourism and Hospitality Small Business Support Grant in the budget. Another important piece that I'd ask for all of your help on is our community building fund. It's a $105 million community building fund that over the next 2 years is going to support non-for-profit tourism, culture, sport, and recreation organizations. And that's starting with the $55 million operating stream. And why I think this is important is it's really important for me that, we have what we call frequent flyers for a lot of these programs, organizations that have grant writers in many respects. These are city slickers who really know how to write a good grant. And it's important for me that we really get out aggressive to the rural areas of the riding that I represent, and why I'm pleading and imploring for council and you, your worship, to support me with this initiative, is that we get out and target the small non-for-profits, the things that keep our community vibrant, our hockey leagues, our soccer leagues, things like that, and the non-for-profits that make our communities the great places that they are to live, work, and raise a family. So I'm asking for your support in helping. We have a technical briefings to walk organizations through grant writing. I know for many of them, the daunting task of writing the grant sometimes makes it prohibitive. So let's work together. This is why my office is here, cognizant of the realities and small organizations that don't have the audited support. And I'll reference something that Paige has done, who's in my office and joins me on this call tonight. As a result of small non-for-profits saying, hey, Dave, we don't have the third-party audited ability. That comes at a significant cost. That needs to be changed. Well, within about a month, we had that changed. And that was, it takes a team to address this. Paige spoke directly with the chair of Trillium and the minister's office. And, I advocated as well. And that was addressed. And I would give a shout out to Tammy at Campbellford Legion. She was literally the person that highlighted this, Colburn Legion as well. So that's the importance of our rapport with the people who put us in these roles in addressing these policy decisions. So I'm excited about those additional supports for non-for-profits and for our tourism sector that we rely on. So that's also in the budget. In addition, I think it's important in talking about our healthcare investments, community paramedicine, which we're expanding across the province, which we benefit from, allowing our emergency response, leaders to respond in a non-emergency setting, helping seniors age in place. We've also got supports for job training tax credits to help, again, that human resource capacity issue in healthcare, helping people learn as they earn. This is up to 50% or up to $2,000 in reimbursement, expanding childcare benefits, for families through the enhanced care tax credit, which is going to provide an estimated $1,500 per family. So there's a number of additional measures there to support workers and families in the budget. Obviously, bolstering vaccine locations. We're expanding to local pharmacies. A couple ring true, the Costco, Walmart, High Street Guardian Pharmacy in Peterborough, to name a few. We've got a number coming online in Campbellford and surrounding area. And I've asked, I've issued a challenge to local mayors as well to help identify, underserviced areas and pharmacies as we continue to expand that location. And why that matters is these are existing supply chains. Our pharmacies played an integral role in the most successful flu vaccine in Canadian history in Ontario that we're on the heels of. So we've got to, any one of you that are small business owners, understand the importance of supply chain, of logistics, and of leveraging those strengths and to get jabs in arms. In addition, I also wanted to highlight a few other additional investments. Obviously, the investments for the emergency safe restart, the $195,000 that the municipalities received through those sorts of investments. And I know that the municipality was just approved for the COVID resilience stream, which I'm very pleased to say that OSM was just approved for. It's been really important that we've been working quickly to get those resilient COVID resilient streams out and into the hands of our municipalities, because we know your margins and the challenges that you faced in service delivery. So I think that's been really important. Obviously, for our farming communities, expanding processing capacity and expanding through the CAP grant, the ability to grow that processing capacity, supporting workers on the front line, supporting temporary foreign workers as well, critical to our supply chains for ag. So there's a number of things, but I'd really like to focus a Q&A in the next sort of 10-15 minutes that I have left, and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. Thanks, Your Worship.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dave. We certainly have some sense of how busy you are, and we appreciate the fact you take time out of your schedule to appear before council and staff and provide information and ask for questions. And that's what I'm going to turn next. Are there questions from any members of council to our MPP? And if you have one, now is the time to do it. Go ahead, Deputy Clerk.
Thank you through the mayor, and thanks, David, for coming to our council. Appreciate it, and all the work that this COVID has put upon everybody's shoulders. My question to you is around our community rec center, our arena, and we just seemingly can't get a lot of grants there. The Lions Club utilizes that pre-COVID for the bingo hall up top. It needs a number of renovations. Can not-for-profit, like the Lions Club, put in for a grant around those renovations, even though they do not physically own the facility, but certainly utilize it intensely?
Yes, through the operating stream and through the capital stream, you can for that. It's not a letter of support from the municipality would go a long way, because municipalities are excluded from that specific application piece, but it is up to local non-for-profits. So I would be happy to support that with all of you and wrapping our arms around an application for that. I know, I am aware that, just to briefly touch on the ICIP stream, that was oversubscribed 10-1 for the CCR, or Community Culture Rec stream. So for every billion in for the billion in asks and monies that we had available with the feds, we had 10 billion in requests. So it was a very, very competitive stream, and had a number of metrics supported. And I would also add the Crystal Springs water main replacement. I know that is high priority. I have spoken to Mayor Taylor and CAO, Greg, who's on the line here, about this. This is of high priority for me, and I'm not going to stop until, bottom line, we address this issue. I'm very frustrated that we're not addressing this systemically. We've had a number of challenges in terms of trying to expand the green stream. Now, we work proactively with the feds. We'd asked to expand it. They'd said no. So we're trying to work, and we are working very collaboratively together, and those dollars are getting out into our communities. But this is a real issue for me in getting that one addressed, and I'm not going to stop until we get some monies, to support that project.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe we've got an opportunity with the service club here to do something with the arena on the round. Thank you.
Sure, that's a good idea. We can pursue that. Councillor Howie, the question, Ken?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, David, again, for everything that you've been doing for our township. And I'm sure, that's all thanks from all of our councillors here and their mayors. And one of the problems I've heard of is in regards to the provincial business grant for COVID. And it's qualifying with the time periods that they say they need the numbers for seasonal businesses. They show seasonal business as December and January for the revenues for ski slopes, but they show for your other seasonal businesses as April, where a lot of businesses don't get up and going until May or June, and they can't give your numbers or for putting an application in. I don't know if you're aware of that or if you have any answers for that. I did call them and they told me that the only thing you could do is somebody could protest the application.
Yeah, so this is something I have heard. I mean, we did a couple things locally. First and foremost, I mean, constantly addressing this via formal letters to municipalities and mayors, and communicating when these streams are open, sending out emails to, I sent one, I hope I had everybody's email address to all of you on a number of these supports available for small business, which did flag that program. There were not as prescriptive as you suggest with respect to the April piece. I have heard some identify that, and when we worked with them to make the application, there is flexibility on that. I mean, I think of a startup that started in December and then was locked down 2 weeks later. They were eligible. They received close to the maximum amount of funding. So they're a tangible example of of a business that would never have had those months to point back to. So there was a lot of flexibility around that, which is why it was, I just suffice to say, yes, I did hear that, but that wasn't the reality with respect to this program. There was, they were very flexible. You just had to show proof point, or that you were a startup and that, you were forced to close, which made you eligible for this program. So there has to obviously be a demonstrable loss. I mean, a company that has done well, and I mean, I'm not suggesting that there have been many. I understand this has been a very difficult time, but you had to show either a loss or that you were affected and forced to shut down, which restricted your ability for earnings. And to date, we've had over, I think it's to date now 300. We've had over 150,000 small businesses that have benefited from this program, and hundreds locally. So I'm happy to address it. I mean, the deadline has passed, but that seasonal piece, I think, Councillor Howie, we can address in the tourism carve out, and there's still a time before that opens. So I will speak to seasonal businesses and specifically those in the tourism sector for this new stream.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dave, you did mention earlier about at times how onerous the application process can be when someone's applying to any level of government for some funding. Does your office have the resources that if a small business owner was finding the application terribly difficult or confusing or just wanted some help with it, do you have the resources to help them with that if they were to contact your office?
Yes, we can help them with it. I mean, this OSBG was very straightforward application, and we did proactively reach out to businesses to make sure if they were having issues. We compiled, I think, Paige can correct me, but about a list of over 120 businesses that were having issues. We've whittled it down to now less than 20 in terms of those that we've addressed. Some we've had to be very difficult to say, look, my apologies, but you're ineligible. Many, though, we did get that application in, make it successful. So suffice to say, in short, to your answer, yes, we do. We can walk them and support it. And I would say if our office doesn't have the immediate answer, we can get that technical briefing and connect you with the ministry and really get a deep dive with the civil service.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions from members of council to Dave tonight? Councillor Powers, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. MPP Pacini, I do appreciate, as others have said, you taking time out of your busy schedule to come and be with us today. So, and I will say overall from the review of the budget that I have done, I think there's a lot of positives embedded within the budget. Couple of questions for you coming from that. One is around broadband internet. I was happy to see that there is some significant funding coming related to broadband internet. That is something that is near and dear to our community's hearts.
Hey, I'm so very sorry. My computer just died. Sorry about that.
That's all right. So I can start over.
Yes.
So I was just saying, MPP Pacini, that first and foremost, thanks so much for being here, and we really do appreciate it. I was saying that overall, I'm pleased with what I'm seeing in the budget. But just a couple of questions around one being the broadband internet. That is something that's near and dear to our heart. And I see you've only got a couple of minutes left. And so just near and dear to our heart here is especially during this time of pandemic, and you're probably hearing that across the provinces, internet is no longer a luxury item. It is an absolute necessity. I'm curious in terms of the broadband internet investments, is it targeted to particular groups or areas, and are you lining up with the CRTC in your investments as it relates to those funds that may come available? So are you assuring that the broadband internet lines up with the CRTC's recommendations for minimum standards for internet use or internet
Yes.
broadband support?
Nick, that's an excellent question. And the short answer is yes. We also are working with the UBF, a fund that the feds have, to make sure that we're working in tandem. So if the province funds via the Improving Connectivity for Ontarians, or ICON program, that there's synergy with the UBF and those standards. I will say it is important to note that this is the largest investment in broadband in Canadian history. And I think it is a point of pride for the government of Ontario that we dwarf any federal investment that's ever been made. I think which speaks to twofold, speaks to the priority for this government, but also speaks to a lack of attention at a federal level of governments of all stripes over the last number of years. So this is a historic investment. And I know people say, politicians and just numbers. First of all, it's important that you allocate those numbers, but then that you have the streams through it. So the ICON program, we've had 2 streams, of which a number of internet service providers have put forward projects that will tangibly benefit OSM, which is really critical. And there's more work to do, working with our municipalities and identifying underserviced areas, your official plan review, identifying target employment areas, target settlement growth areas, to make sure we get ahead of that now. I'm done with these new folks moving out here and then saying, look, we've bought a place, or we want to move here and there's no internet. We've got to be, as Wayne Gretzky said, skate to where the puck's going. And that's what we've got to do as a government. So I think the first and critical piece has been the historic investment. The second critical piece is have intakes so we can get shovels in ground, which we've done. And there's more to come. And third, work closely with the feds, which we are doing on those standards. I will say one of the things, if I'm to just sort of say as a constituent and as a resident of our community as well, I would love to see the feds address competitive competition with the spectrum. It is a federal, you are right, this is a federal level of jurisdiction. So I would like to see increased competition, because I think we're all too familiar with the sort of gun to our head model with this is the only service provider, so take it or leave it. And I think we'd all like to see more competition. So I'd love to see more room for our small service providers to be competitive. And we have, through the intake, made a priority of looking at those small providers.
Right. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. I know you're basically out of time, so we don't have to answer this, but I'd appreciate some information as it relates to daycare, childcare, spots and supports, because that has certainly become a challenge. And with the recent announcement of the online learning extending, it will certainly come up again in terms of daycare spots and costs and things like that. So I know you're out of time, but if you're able to provide some information as how the budget helps with that in the long term, that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Briefly, additional investments to support expanded daycare spaces are critical. And also, I mean, we know that with not closing schools, but we're seeing new schools being announced. Having those mandatory daycare spaces embedded in those schools has been critical too. And I know, I mean, we're no stranger to that in OSM either, with the embedded daycare in school. But I would also suggest perhaps that maybe I'm happy to do another Zoom roundtable, potentially open it up to the public as well, just focused around OSM and provincial federal collaborations on projects we can do. So maybe we could do that in the coming weeks.
Perfect. That's a great idea, Dave. I know you're out of time, so I won't.
I'm so sorry about that
any longer.
tonight.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Dave. We certainly appreciate it. You know what the burning issues are in OSM, because we're in touch regularly about that. I think another town hall meeting or attendance further at another council meeting would be great, because I'm sure that we could chat all night long.
Thank you for your leadership and council and staff. I've always appreciated the recommendations, and please, just a phone call away on anything, as you know, and appreciate you highlighting what these priorities.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. The one attribute, Dave, that I admire and respect as much as anything, and I guess I'm old-fashioned, is someone who works hard, and you work hard. And I appreciate that. You work hard for this riding, for this township and your riding, and I appreciate that. I certainly recognize it, and I just wanted to say thank you. So we'll look forward to the next time we chat. And,
me too.
Thank you again to you and your staff. Your staff are great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay, I'd like a motion, please, to receive the delegation from MPP Dave Piccini. And that's moved by Councillor Alden, seconded by Councillor Powers. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, our next delegation, and I think this is one that Councillor Powers will be, well, actually the clerk will be having him leave the meeting, is, let me get my agenda here. Diana Kay and Mike Lord, and I see their names on the screen, and it's really just an update on the source separated organics facility. This was something that I think the most recent public open house that Mike and Diana asked if there would be some merit in coming to council for an update, and I said absolutely there would. So thank you for being here tonight, folks, and we'll turn it over to you. And I see James Zachenko here too. Good evening, James.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I would ask Ms. Scott whether or not I should be sharing my screen for the presentation. So you have something to look at while I'm talking.
Diana, I'm the only one that can share right now. So
Okay.
you've got something for me to share. Do you want me to share the presentation?
Yes, please. Thank you. Well, through you, Your Worship, while Heather is setting that up, because we are on the clock, so I want to make sure we have every minute. Yes, you're right. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to provide a project progress with respect to the Peterborough Organics facility. Obviously not the first time you've heard this project, and it won't be the last. It's a long journey to get through the process itself. So we're happy to provide you with some updates. Thank you very much, Heather, for bringing this up. So just a quick overview here. Obviously, the proponent is the city of Peterborough, and the purpose is to develop a process, develop a facility, that will process leaf and yard waste and source separated organics. As you know, the property location is adjacent to and directly north of the existing city and county landfill site. You can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So this is a project timeline, and we showed this at our last public information center. So everything in blue provides a very high level work item task assessment and milestones that we'd like to hit throughout the project or need to hit through the project. Everything in blue relates to the planning process, and everything in green relates to the ECA process. So as you can see, our little star of where we are says that we are at PIC number 2. We can start moving that towards studies completed because that's what we're doing right now. We're undertaking all the final studies in preparation of submitting the planning applications. Also at the bottom of the slide under the blue box and in the green box, those are all the draft studies that are completed to date and the studies that still are in process and need to be completed. The most important, I think, at this point is the noise, air, and odor impact assessment. I know that's going to be a concern for the residents and that is ongoing. And that's going to have an impact on how we proceed with the process and what the conceptual plan is going to look like. Next slide. Thank you, Heather. So just an overview of the subject property. The subject property is identified in the light blue and the subject site, so where the actual facility is proposed to be located, is outlined in red. And then the yellow outline is our 500-meter area of influence. So it's the buffer area, and those are all the properties that are within that area of influence that we will be considering when undergoing the studies, as well as the planning assessment. Next slide. So this is relatively new. This is a conceptual site plan that was not presented at the last meeting. It is a new plan based on the information that we're receiving from our studies. And with respect to this site plan, there are a few changes that I'd like to discuss. One is that we are proposing to access the subject site from the existing landfill site. So there will be shared access there. So we're not going to create another entrance off of Bensford Road in order to access this site. And you know what, I'm trying to show you, however, I don't have access. So I can't tell you what I'm talking about. However, to the south, access will come through there. Directly to the west of the site access is the site office. There will be approximately 8 to 10 people that would be working within that office to help with the operation of the facility. And to the, I guess, northeast of that, a larger building, that is the receiving building. So this is where the trucks will come in with the material, drop it off inside the receiving building, and then leave the site. The trucks will back into the receiving building and then leave the site the same way that they came in. They will also share the waste scale. So that would be, and some of the servicing too. So there's opportunities here for shared infrastructure, which will help save on taking over excess land to support additional infrastructure. And now we're intensifying on the services that are already provided. So we don't have to create new things, which is a benefit and positive to this project. Phase 1 outlined in all black. So that is the first phase of the project. There'll be approximately 8 bunkers, 2 rows of 4, and that will support the project initially. And phase 2 is set for any future expansion. So if there's a lot of material coming in and a lot of municipalities are participating in the program, then there's opportunity to expand if required. The one thing you'll notice that is different on this site plan from the previous site plan is that there are additional 10 rows. And so that is the open windrow facility. And that's where the leaf and yard waste will be located and stored. And this is similar to what's happening on the Harper site. We'll carry it over to this location because, as you know, the ministry is requiring the city to close the Harper site. And then there's the grinding and processing storage area that is located just, I guess, southeast of the rows. And so this is where, when the material is finished, it will be stockpiled. It's also where the material will be screened. And if any of the material hasn't decomposed entirely, it'll cycle back through the process, but this is where it'll be stored for pickup to its final destination. You will notice there's some plantings along Bensford Road, and to the north and west of the site, there's a berm and vegetation that we are proposing to act as a buffer. However, this will be directed by the impact assessment. So once that's completed, you'll probably see some of this change as required through ministry standards. There is also a snow storage area that is adjacent to the open windrow and the storage area, and that's where the snow will be stored. And everything that is collected on site in terms of runoff, it will be directed to the stormwater pond that is located at the southeast corner of the site. Additionally, you'll see the orange area that has been identified as species at risk habitat through our through our species at risk assessment. And the dashed blue line is the 30-meter buffer from the intermittent water course. So intermittent meaning that it's not a permanent water course, it's not wet all the time, it's wet seasonally. So the intention here is to stay outside of these areas. So we're not proposing anything within the that is connected to the facility to be located within those two areas because they need to be protected. Thank you, Heather. Next slide. So this is an example of an existing facility. It's in Thorold, Ontario, and it's operated by Walker Industries. So you'll notice some similarities with this site. You see that there are the bunkers, and some are covered and some are uncovered as the product decomposes and it becomes more like a soil substance. It gets moved through phases, and you'll probably recall this from the last presentation of that schematic, that as it starts to get processed, you move it from one bunker to the next to finish the product. The storage area on the right side of the receiving building is similar, as well as the stormwater pond that's located close to the pond or the lake, I guess. Thank you, Heather. The only difference here is you'll notice the receiving building. It does have a biofilter, which this facility will have as well, and that helps contain the odors. But this facility is open, whereas the facility we're proposing is closed. So that will also help with the odor. And the intention there is that building, any of the doors will only be open to allow access for the trucks and will remain closed otherwise. So we also have a summary of the studies that have been completed to date. The species at risk report, this was completed in 2019. As I mentioned, there was an area identified for species at risk habitat, more specifically bobolink and eastern meadowlark. No other SAR were observed on site, and the timing windows for construction, meaning when construction cannot happen on site, will be implemented to ensure that we're protecting that habitat. The environmental impact study also completed in 2019. It ensured that we are implementing a 30-meter setback from the intermittent water course and that we are maintaining that during the construction and operations. There were no other significant features identified on site. And that report, once you have an opportunity to review it, does set out a variety of mitigation measures, including sediment and erosion control to ensure that we're protecting any species on site and their habitat. Stormwater management is also completed, and this field investigations were completed in June of 2020. And the biggest point to take off from this is, I already mentioned that the runoff from the composting pad, the leaf and air waste area, and the snow storage will all be collected and what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh.
Contained.
Contained, thank you. And I can't believe I'm losing my vocabulary. It will be treated. Oh my goodness, treated. That's the word I'm looking for. Treated through the stormwater pond. It's an aerated pond, so that will also ensure that the smell is not having an impact on the surrounding properties. Thank you, Heather. My goodness, and thank you, Mike. An agricultural impact assessment that was completed in October 2020. This was a very important study because it demonstrated that we're not taking prime agricultural lands out of production. So it's not having an impact on the agricultural opportunity of the site or the operations around the site. And a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment was also completed. Stage 1 indicated that there was enough background information to suggest that a stage 2 is required. And stage 2 was completed with First Nations representatives on site, and no archaeological resources were recovered, and therefore no further assessments were required. The hydrological assessment work was conducted last year. In June, there were boreholes that were completed, and also groundwater monitoring wells were installed just to sample the groundwater. And it was identified that there's no significant risk, or that we're not anticipating any significant risk to the water quality functions of the area. And while construction is happening and over the duration and the life of this facility, the annual groundwater will be monitored. And finally, the traffic impact study, also completed, I believe, in 2019. It concluded that there would be a limited number of additional trips generated by this proposed facility, and there's no road improvements that would be required, and there is no significant impact to the traffic operations. So next is just a summary of our stakeholder engagement. PIC number 1, unfortunately, was not well attended. The comments that we received are all from municipal council, but we do appreciate that feedback because it's important as well. So it included distance to stakeholders and their circulation. It was suggested that this is a good location for the site because it's adjacent to the landfill and there's opportunity for shared facilities. And it was also requested that we provide some examples of the core system. So that's why we included it as well in our presentation today. PIC 2 was not well attended, but we had double the residents that showed up. So from 0 to 2. But we did have a new resident in the area. So she was very interested in the project, had some concerns potentially or specifically around odor and the opportunity for rodents and animals to come in and create an issue. So Mike Lord was very good in ensuring that all of her questions were answered and has been in contact with her since. And that is it. If you have any questions, I have Mike Lord here with me this evening, who's the project manager, and as your worship, through you, your worship, James Zashenko is here as well from the city of Peterborough.
Very good. Thank you, Diana. We'll wait till we're screen. There we are. Okay, are there any questions from members of council to any of the representatives here tonight on this project? This is update. Go ahead, Deputy Clerk.
Yes, through the mayor. First of all, thank you for coming out again. I have one question. When you mentioned that access will be through the existing entrance for the landfill, my concern is that there may be a backup of traffic there. There has been at times, has there been any thought of a turning lane there or something like that? You mentioned the traffic impact, but was that done when the anticipation of the second entrance and now we've gone down to one?
So the traffic, through your worship, through the traffic impact study, it is reviewed whether or not additional turning lanes or taper lanes are required in order to better service the site. But because there is not a significant increase in the number of trucks or traffic for the site, it was determined that it's not required.
And that determination was done knowing there was one entrance versus the two that was proposed initially.
That's correct.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Deputy Mayor Clark. Yeah, the shared infrastructure with the landfill site is the access road, as well as the scales and also the leachate collection system. And in the traffic impact assessment was done. We were not once we had identified the site and the proposed location. It made total sense, especially when we were speaking with the Ministry of Environment. It made total sense to have a single access, the same access to the landfill site. So when we engaged the consultant to complete the traffic impact assessment, we asked him to look at the potential increase in traffic associated with the composting facility. One thing that's important to note is that the composting facility itself will not be accessible to the general public. It's only for collection vehicles. So the number of trips don't increase appreciably related to the number of trips that are currently going into the landfill site, because we're diverting a significant volume of material into the composting facility. In addition to that, to answer your question about whether or not turning lanes, whether it be a left turn lane going north or a taper going to the south to get into the landfill site. There's quite a long, quite a distance between where the scales start and where the entrance is inside the landfill itself. And so the traffic impact assessment also looked at the queuing distance, and it was determined that that was a sufficient amount of queuing space to be able to.
If I could just follow up then, as you say, it will be these collection trucks that are coming in. What kind of increased volume are we looking at?
Go ahead, James.
So the intent, the city's collection strategy actually takes advantage of split body trucks. So we're starting the procurement of split body trucks, which will minimize, the intent is to keep the same routes, same vehicles, just put the organics on one side and garbage on the other.
Because we have, I know it's COVID driven, but we certainly have had some lineups there over the last year. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of council on this presentation? One more, Deputy Clerk?
Yes, one more. I know at one time, and because of COVID, we couldn't, but there was going to be it was going to be organized that we could do a site visit, and I really, I'm sure all of council would certainly like to visit it. I'm very concerned about odor and would like to see an operational one just for my own peace of mind. So I hope that if we can get through this COVID, that will be an opportunity for council.
Through your worship, I know, Mike, we've discussed this before, and the offer, I think, still stands. We just have to connect with the facility and ensure that the timing is appropriate and that there's no restrictions in place to ensure that you're getting the full experience of the site itself.
The plan in the schedule, the plan was to take the tour in February of this year. And the challenges with COVID, it's been the facility in Thorold that we wanted to take you to is under COVID restrictions as well, just like many of the other facilities in the province. So we would have taken you there by now if we had that opportunity.
So maybe maybe by this fall, if we get enough people inoculated, maybe it can be a fall trip. And
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mayor Taylor, if I might, I know that we're tight for time, but in terms of next steps, so one of the things to reassure council is that the facility, the construction of the facility can't commence, and as a matter of fact, we can't submit the application to the Ministry of Environment for the ECA, the environmental compliance approval for the facility, until we have the zoning in place. And so that would be a next step. Like we would go through the submission of the planning applications, and then we would work in parallel to get the application prepared for the environmental compliance approval. And then if we were successful in receiving council support for rezoning, then we would make the application to the Ministry of Environment, which would take it through another set of review. And from a timing perspective, the Ministry of Environment has a service guarantee of a year. One thing that's important to note is that this project is funded by the federal government in part, and the funding is exhausted at the end of March in 2024. So our plan is to have the facility constructed and in operation commissioned in the fall of 2023. And so when we start to work our way backwards in terms of 1 year for the Ministry of Environment to be able to issue their approval and give us an opportunity to be able to tender the work on behalf of the city for the construction of the facility. The construction of the facility will roughly take about 6 to 8 months as well. So when we look at timing wise, you can expect to see a planning application in May or at the latest in June.
Okay. Well, surely to goodness, we will be through this COVID. by 2023, which means we can look forward to a tour of an existing facility for any members of council or staff who might be interested. It may not be in 2021, but it sounds to me like there's still lots of time.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from members of council or staff? I think we've got it covered. Thank you very much for the presentation and the update tonight. I firmly believe it's an important project, and I look forward to proceeding with the next steps. And I guess one of those will be a planning application that we'll be dealing with sometime in the future.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Motion please to accept the presentation from DM Wells regarding the source separated facility. Councillor Howie and Deputy Clark. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Heather, you can bring Councillor Powers back in. Okay, good. So the minutes will reflect that Councillor Powers excused himself during that presentation. We're back now on the agenda to 7.1, which is the road committee minutes. So thank you, Council, for adjusting the agenda to allow for our delegations to get through. Deputy Clerk, you had something?
Yes, just a comment. We're all sitting here on council. It's not as if we're voting on the rezoning. Could Councillor Powers not sit in on the presentation to have a more thorough understanding?
That is entirely his decision.
Okay, all right, that's fine then. I just felt that when we weren't voting, it's to be informed that it's.
No, that's
Yeah,
entirely
okay.
his decision, and that decision was made. Okay,
Okay.
going back now to 7.1 on the agenda, which is the road committee minutes. And Greg was just starting on that when we veered left. So go ahead, Greg.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I'll look to Heather, and I think Heather and Harold's going to join us here as well. Harold has stayed put, and so you can get a chance to ask any questions as well to our interim director of public works. But I'll look to Heather, because we in these committee minutes we took the recommendations from the council meeting and had a conversation at the roads committee, and between her and I we can sort of deal with the matters related to the recommendations that were sent to the committee. So the first one was Campbelltown Road, and I'll pass it over to Heather.
The first one was the reduction in speed and the use of alternative speed restriction measures. Recommendation from the roads committee is to lower the speed to 40 kilometers from County Road 2 for the entire length of Campbelltown Road, and that the public works engage in brushing activities along that section, and further the OPP be reminded to install the Black Cat in the spring to obtain speed statistics. I believe that Campbelltown Road is currently being brushed, or perhaps maybe is done. Harold may want to comment on that.
Harold, can you hear us?
I'd have to unmute him, Heather.
Okay, well, if Harold is able to join us, and he can correct me. I think that there he is.
There's Harold.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Can you hear
Harold,
me now,
yep.
folks?
Welcome. Yes.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and members of council and staff. Thanks for having me at your meeting tonight. In answer to your question, yes, Campbelltown Road has been now completed of all the brushing that we were doing on that project.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Harold.
Everybody still hear me okay?
Yep. So let's just go through the report one issue at a time. Campbelltown Road. Just for some background, I can inform councilors that Hazel Crescent corridor off Campbelltown Road is 40 kilometers an hour. rather than going with some sort of a transition zone, we just thought it was cleaner and simpler if the whole thing is 40. Hazel Crescent, Campbelltown Road, all parts of it are just 40 kilometers an hour. That's how the roads committee come up with that recommendation. Are there any questions from members of council on that one? Go ahead. Okay, Deputy Clerk first and then Councillor Powers.
Yes, so parts of that road were at what previous?
It was 80 and then it went down to 50.
Okay, I have no trouble supporting that. That certainly seems logical to have it consistently throughout that area. I totally agree and would support that.
Councillor Powers?
Yeah, just following up with Deputy Clerk, I would agree with the recommendation that's coming from the Roads Committee. I'm curious, I know that there was some discussion during our council meeting leading up to this regarding alternative speed reduction options. I'm curious if they were talked about at all during the Roads Committee meeting beyond just speed limits.
Oh, no, they definitely were. Heather, did you, Ken's the chair of that committee. I mean, I don't want to lead the conversation. How do you want to explain this one?
Between the CAO and myself, we can answer this. Yes, alternative measures were discussed, such as, I think, speed bumps was one that was brought up. It was deemed to be not a favorable route to go, and that was from our insurance perspective as well. There's noise associated with that. Our plows are not conducive to the up and down of the speed bumps. So they end up having more mechanical issues with that. They're noisy. You can get removable ones, but that wasn't suggested either. There is liability in terms of, for example, if you have a motorcycle or if you have a truck with a trailer on it, if it hits and something happens, the municipality would be responsible for that. Greg, do you have anything else to add to that?
Just really that the committee suggested that by lowering the speed to 40 coming off of number 2 and matching that speed to what is already on Hazel Crescent all the way down, and doing the brushing would hopefully accomplish those particular objectives that were sought.
Deputy Clerk, go ahead, Bonnie.
I'd like to move the recommendation on Campbelltown Road. How
do we want to do this? You want to just wait till the end of the report? I mean, if council approves the report, that's part of it, rather than going through it one by one. What's the easiest way, Heather?
Just to do it at the end. Okay. Report, if that's okay with council.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
The next one was Assumption Road, and council wanted us to look at reducing the speed in the section between Keene Road and Crowley Line. The recommendation from the road committee was to have Keene Road and Crowley remain at 80 kilometers per hour, and that Assumption Road be considered for the installation of the Black Cat in order to obtain speed statistics.
Any questions from members of council on this one? There simply wasn't enough evidence to support, the committee felt, to support a change in the posted speed there. Councillor Powers, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just I'm still a little bit on the fence here in terms of whether or not this particular roadway, I know I'm the one that sort of brought this one forward, but I am happy to see, and I'll be interested to see what the Black Cat information comes back as to whether or not we actually do have a speed related issue or not on that particular roadway. Certainly from residents that I've spoken to on that roadway, they believe there is a speed related issue on that roadway, but I'm glad to see that, and I'm comfortable with leaving it as is with the Black Cat, and then we can go from there once we have those results.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Yes, the same concerns there. My only concern is with COVID, and we do the Black Cat, we may not get the true figures that we were seeing prior with residents complaining. So, I mean, we have to bear in mind that as well. And I guess we could have the Black Cat back again once people get moving more freely. I just don't want it skewed because of COVID.
No, that's a valid concern, and I think that common sense will prevail there is exactly when we put it up, but it certainly now there'd be no benefit to it. Okay.
A quick follow-up, if I can, Mayor Taylor, just
Go
not
ahead.
related to this particular roadway, but actually to the Black Cat. Does the Black Cat actually have the speed limit sort of flashing light? Or is it simply a device that's capturing speed related or traffic related data? So what is the device that has the flashing, you are going 65, you're going 66? What is that one called?
That's a speed radar sign, a digital speed radar sign. And there's various kinds sold. We have one in the village of Keene that doesn't work very well because it's powered by solar, but the Black Cat is actually is hidden. Residents and traffic are not supposed to know it's there.
Right, that's what I thought. Because that's
It's more of a
something
spy
that,
box.
Go ahead, Heather, sorry.
It's more of a spy box. So it's a little black box that sits in the tree, and you're correct. Unless somebody tells you that one is there, you would not know it was there.
right, yeah. The reason I just ask is I know that, I'd be curious to see if the speed radar devices that we have in Keene or alternatives to that could be used in concerning areas, we'll say, to help reduce.
Can I suggest that the logical sequence would be to install a Black Cat there, and from the data determine whether there is indeed a real problem with speeding, and if there is, then we can try to figure out ways to address it. But I think the first thing to do is to install the Black Cat and get the evidence that we need to try to make an informed decision.
Yep, I agree.
And as we said, timing is important on that one, and with any luck, maybe midsummer, we could be back to a regular traffic flow. That remains to be seen. One more thing, Deputy Clerk, last one.
Yeah, just to that point with the flashing radar, that may be something that we could look at other municipalities and sharing and moving it around to different areas. We talked about that before, and they're not as expensive as I initially thought. I attended a convention and had some material on that and was quite surprised at the cost of it. It was not as high. And through to the mayor, does the county have one that we could borrow? I know they've set it up over at Assumption before.
Well, I can't answer that. I don't know. Heather's got her hand up.
Mayor Taylor, if I might, the OPP does have a shared one. I have received it from time to time. If you recall, I did put it in here just prior to us getting this.
Yes.
And that we had hardwired in. So there is an ability, if it's available, to get that. But it's just whether it's available. I believe it's shared between Peterborough County and Northumberland County.
Okay, maybe that's something for future
request.
when we get the data. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Ironically enough, I spent a couple hours this afternoon researching speed radar boards, the different ones that are available and the cost. So I tell you, there's a lot of them out there, and you're right, Bonnie, they're not as expensive as what you might think. Anyway, so we'll deal with Assumption Road in the manner that the committee has recommended, as long as council agrees to that. Moving down now, Dillon Road.
The next one was Dillon Road, and again, it was for reduction in speed. The recommendation from the Roads Committee is that Dillon Road be reduced from 80 kilometers to 60 kilometers from Assumption East 2. And I apologize, at the time of this report, I did not have the address. So I will leave that again to Harold Nelson to address.
Go ahead, Nick.
That address is, I believe, 2417 Dillon Road is the first, or depending on which direction you're going, the first house right before the bend coming into Assumption.
Yeah, Harold, Harold, could you repeat that? There was just a little.
Sorry, can you hear me through the mayor?
Yeah.
And I believe it was from over at the address that was just given to, I believe, Drummond Line, I believe was where the reduction was going to go to.
No, it was the other way, Harold. It was
From what
that
I
end,
understand,
going west to Keene Road.
yes, I apologize for that, Mr. Mayor, yes.
That's all right. You're still
That
fairly
had
new to the
told
road
me
system.
that was looked at.
Yeah. The important thing is
I
that
apologize, you're correct.
it's covering the section of Dillon Road that is on either side of the trail system, which is really where the problem was. So that's what this recommendation is attempting to do.
Mayor Taylor, I'm getting a lot of echoing and feedback.
Okay, as long as staff and council, if you just keep yourselves on mute, please, unless you're talking, I think that would help a lot. Thank you. Okay, the next one, Heather.
Mirror Drive, this was just a road complaint. It was, oh, sorry, there was other speed concerns that we did talk about. Lakeview Drive was brought up, and we're going to discuss that at a subsequent road committee meeting. The next was Elmira Drive. There was a road complaint tentatively scheduled for resurfacing would be 2022 and 23, and that was with respect to the surface of the road and the condition of the road. The committee was advised that the weather dependent grading would commence the week of March the 8th, which I believe that has been done.
Yes, yeah. What happened there, Heather, if I can add, the condition of matchet line at that particular time was really bad. And so we'd received a number of complaints from residents about it, and Public Works was able to get into some early spring grading, and they fixed it up temporarily. It deteriorated awfully quickly. We've been back over there again. Harold had the crew over there just last week and fixing it up again. So,
Thursday he was there, Mr. Mayor.
Thursday, yeah. So that's what that was related to.
We then discussed the 2021 project update and future projects. As you know, the one on top for 2021 is the Drummond Line reconstruction, which is 8.1 kilometers from Highway 7 to County Road 2. The work will consist of brushing, fill, ditching, road surface, and there's going to be a review of guide rails. In the fall, brushing will commence on Blizzard Line and Settlers Line south of number 7. We also talked about a road tour. It's tentatively scheduled for Monday, April 26th, but due to COVID, I'm not so sure that's going to happen. So it will be pushed out probably again. And we just reviewed the impact of COVID-19 on the Public Works staff. Committee was advised that all COVID-19 protocols are in place and being adhered to. For example, we have our masking policy. Mostly of the staff are working on in their own vehicle. Shop is closed to the public. All personnel in township vehicles equipped with personnel and protective equipment, and each person is responsible for wiping down their own pieces of machinery. The waste was up. We had a waste update.
Heather, excuse me just for a minute. Mark, did you have a question on the last one? I saw your hand come up, I think.
Sorry, Mayor Taylor. Yeah, I was jumping ahead. I can wait till the end. Let's finish the report.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry, Heather. Go ahead.
And last is the waste update, which I am pleased to announce that we have a 14% reduction between the hard launch in September to the December 2020 launch. So that was really good news, considering we weren't sure how the Clear Bag program was going to roll out. So hopefully we'll see better numbers. And we'll get a better understanding, because now we'll have a full year of Clear Bag versus only a few months of the 2020.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Mark, was that the issue you wanted to comment on?
Actually, no. Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I did have a question to the overall report, and I was going to make the recommendation to receive the report and whatever action we had to take to move it forward. But I did have a question on the road reduction in the speed limits. And Harold might have mentioned it when he was speaking, and I wanted to say hi to Harold and thank him for joining our staff. Although temporarily, we look forward to having you here. It was just with regard to posting the speed limits. Was that done, Harold said, or it's we're working towards that? I just wasn't sure.
Heather can answer that.
Mayor Taylor, I can answer that. What has to happen is the bylaw has to come forward to council. So we're trying to get all of the ones that we're going to reduce done in one bylaw. So that's why there's kind of been a bit of a delay. So once that's done, the bylaw will be passed. I will let Harold know, and then the signs can go up. But until that point, no, they cannot be signed. And then as well, I will also be letting OPP know. And
Heather, we're anticipating those bylaws to come, those speed-related bylaws to come to our next council meeting, correct?
I hope so, yes. That is the hope.
And for council's information, it will also include a section of baseline immediately west of Keene Road, a speed reduction zone there. Staff are looking at that. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
And just to follow up, and just as I said that, I realized what I was saying, and we would need the bylaw. But I guess my question would be more, how long would we anticipate? Is there any shortages of signs or metals or anything like that that's causing, that Harold knows, any problem, or would it be relatively quickly? We think we could address that. I guess that would be more my question. Thank you.
Okay, Harold, can you, if you heard the question, it is once the bylaw is passed approving the speed reduction, how quickly can your crew get the signs up so that it takes effect?
I don't believe there'll be any hold up as soon as we should be able to get the sign up relatively quickly, probably within a couple of days of having the bylaw have them up.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yep, that answers the question, Mark. Good. Harold, that got a thumbs up from 3 or 4 councillors. Okay.
Yep, okay, no problem.
So, council, I guess the proper way to deal with this is just to look for a motion receiving the minutes from the roads committee and approving the recommendations. And I know that well, Councillor Allen has said he'd make that motion. I know Deputy Clerk was going to do the same thing, so I'll look to Bonnie for you to second it. And that's fine. And that's Heather. I think that's all we need at this point, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Councillor Allen has made the motion to approve the recommendations contained within this report, and Deputy Clerk has seconded it. Call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to Ken for chairing that meeting. It was a good meeting, and it took a while, but there was a lot of interesting subjects to discuss. Okay, back down to our agenda in order. We're now going to go to staff reports 12.1. And this is a report from the clerk on the method of voting for our next election. Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Before you tonight is just a memo regarding the 2020 municipal election and the method to be used. My recommendation is to go forward and utilize telephone and the internet voting again. And I did provide you with some statistics as to how we did on the last election, which I feel for being the first time out was a good percentage. So I don't know whether you have any questions with respect to the report, and if so, I'd be glad to answer them.
Very good. Any questions or concerns from members of council? Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Yes, first of all, thanks for the report, Heather. And in reviewing it again, I'm happy to support this. I had forgot about the support that was given if you wanted to come into the office and for staff to walk you through that. I was leaning towards having a walk-in because of that. And then in reviewing the report in its entirety, can we have time? Tonight is just about going ahead with the method we want to authorize, but just talking as a council in the future about any things that you would like to change that you've seen as any issues or council did, so we can have a more thorough talk about a few changes. outside of the system we're going to adopt. I'm comfortable with adopting the system as we did last time, but just maybe going over a few things that we could, that you'll have some insight in as well, being head of it. So thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Powers?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Heather, good report. And certainly I'm supportive of us moving in this direction. My questions are around the actual bylaw document itself. It seems to refer to the year 2020 election, not 2022 election. And the other piece is the bylaw makes the comment that states each adopted for the 2022 election and each election or by-election thereafter. So we're not only talking about 2022, we are essentially laying the standard and the foundation for all elections, municipal elections within Otonabee-South Monaghan hereafter. Is that correct?
In all honesty, that was the same wording that was utilized in the last bylaw as well. So I just obviously did a copy and paste. So I apologize for that, and I will change the year. But in my own opinion, I would still come back to council every year, because this may change in a few years, but it potentially could be the way to go in the next couple of elections.
Yeah, it certainly could be, but I would prefer that we sort of sort of review it on a regular basis, so that we're not committing ourselves, because you don't know what it'll be in 8 years from now, for example, what that'll be. Not to say the council can't review it in the future.
But Heather, if I can ask, when it refers to a by-election, I believe it's
Yeah.
referring to a by-election as a result of a vacancy or something in that current term. It's not referring to another whole general election.
No.
Just a by-election during that term.
Yeah.
Correct?
So,
Correct.
okay.
But I can change the wording if you like, Councillor Powers. I can take out and each election, or I can just leave in just by election, if you're more comfortable with that.
Or some language that if it's tying to the 2022 election, because how it reads, which is the alternative voting methods shall be adopted for the 2022 election and each election or by-election thereafter. So it reads as, to me, any election that would come starting after 2022. But I'm fine as long as we are regularly reviewing this prior to each municipal election. I wouldn't want to commit us on, for the foreseeable future that this is our only option until council comes back to review it. I'd prefer, like you said, Heather, that you bring this back to council prior to each municipal election, and council at that time would have an opportunity to provide input.
Heather, why don't we just say that what we could do is certainly pull the bylaw from the meeting tonight, and just have you draft it with wording to something to the extent that council will review the election method used prior to any municipal election.
Okay.
I think, Mark, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Just unmuting. So I guess just rather than a question, and maybe it's more of a concern, and although I appreciate where we went with the last election and the discussion I had in the community after, I do have some concerns when without an actual physical polling station, because I did have conversations that alluded to the fact that people chose not to vote, and that is a concerning sort of in a democracy for me. So the question I guess I would have, Heather, was and it alluded to, and I think if I'm correct, there was all municipalities in the county of Peterborough had only call-in or internet voting. Is that correct?
I know majority of them went to internet and telephone. I'm not sure. I believe that there was one that might have done paper ballot or they did vote by mail. I'm not 100% sure on that. I would not recommend doing a hybrid approach based on internet, telephone, and paper. I think there is a room for error, more room for error doing it that way, having done traditional paper ballots for many years and then moving to vote by mail. Personally, I think there is room for error with that. And it is more costly as well because you're having to call in staff and people to help run that part of the election. In terms of a polling station, I have not had a polling station for many years since the traditional ballot. So even when we went to vote by mail, you did not have a polling station. Again, it was no different than the same as what we have now, which was a support system. You could come in, you could put your ballot in the box while you were here. But it's no different than coming in and you're casting your ballot via a tablet, the telephone, or the laptop, really.
Okay, go ahead, Mark, if you did something else.
It's just, yeah, just to follow up on that. And I can appreciate that, Heather. And for me, when I look at it, it doesn't raise a whole lot of concerns. I do think in the sort of the where we're at in society and currently there's a lot of questions around or that people are having, and that's I think the only concern I have is that if there is, or if this creates a situation where people choose not to vote, I think I would be concerned with that. I can appreciate what you're saying about the hybrid. Maybe it makes it even more difficult. I think it really stems from the fact that people, not physically, whether it's maybe mail or dropping your vote into a box, it just physically see it go in, where skepticism or uncertainty around how the internet might work is what's causing the concerns that have been brought to me. So I can leave it with that and consider this over. It sounds like we probably are deferring this to another meeting anyway. So I'll consider what the facts and take consideration of that when it comes time to make this recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. You had another comment?
Just a question, Heather. For the support that you gave the different people walking in, was it a huge number? I maybe it was in the report and I missed it. Did you have a lot of people walk in?
No, not really. I think some of them were a little skeptical on how the process worked, but once they got down to it, once we had a 100-year-old, well, actually, I think it was 99 years old individual come in, and he was surprised. He sat down and did it himself. We helped him just a wee bit, but he was surprised at how easy it was. And it was interesting. That was the majority of the comments. Once they came in and they were more comfortable because there was somebody there, they felt quite at ease. I know the younger generation loved it. I had a lot of accolades from the younger generation that loves technology. So in that sense, we actually had probably, if I went down and did statistics, we probably had a huge high percentage of votes come from like the technology age. But our percentage for votes was quite high compared to traditional, how we had been doing our elections.
Okay. I do know that over in Cavan that staff did go to shut-ins that couldn't get it as well, Heather. So, which I thought was very accommodating. When there's, it just depends how you accommodate people. I think that's the key. Thank you.
Exactly.
Council, you will never have a system, a voting system that is comfortable to everyone. It's not possible. But I can tell you, I feel that by allowing folks to vote with their phone or their internet, you are allowing more voter participation than the paper ballot used to do. There were people who didn't bother voting because they had to get in their car and go and do it. When we changed it to vote by mail, that increased voter participation. We've taken it one step further in keeping with the times now and going with telephone and internet. And I know that there are still a few folks out there that want to put the X on the paper ballot, but there are far more voters who would rather vote with their phone or their internet. So I say not one system is going to work the best for all, but I really believe that this is in keeping with the times. This is what this is how elections are going to be held. But I would say, Heather, that there's been a number of comments just regarding the wording of the bylaw, that rather than trying to get you just to edit it now on the fly, it might be better if you come back and just brought it forward to our next meeting.
Certainly.
Councillor Howie, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just in regards to, we got to remember in our township, we have a lot of people that don't live up here and are seasonal, and they have the right to vote as well. And they live in Toronto, and unless we had internet voting, they wouldn't be voting at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let me just pull the report back up. I guess the motion really would be just to receive the report from the clerk on the 2022 municipal election and ask for the bylaw to be deferred to a subsequent meeting for the wording to address some of the concerns raised by council. Moved by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Allen. All in favor? That's carried. All right, council, before we get to the bylaw section, I am going to call a 2-minute break. I'll be back shortly. You can take that opportunity if you need to. Away. All right. Okay, I think we can resume our council meeting. Thank you, council, for the break. Can I get a motion that bylaws 2021-20, 21-22, and 23 be read a first time? Councillor Powers, Deputy Clerk, all in favor? Carried. All right, could I ask the clerk to please review the bylaws? Heather, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So 2021-20 is your council confirming bylaw for your March 8th and March the 22nd council meetings. 2021-22 planning is your zoning bylaw amendment for Elmhurst. And 2021-23 is again your zoning bylaw amendment for Elmhurst that you heard earlier this evening in the public
Very
meeting.
good, thank you. Any questions to the clerk on these three bylaws? If not, could I get a motion, please, that bylaws 2021-20, 22, and 23 be read a second and third time, signed, sealed, and the corporate seal attached. Councillor Allen and Councillor Howie have moved that. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, going down now to correspondence, 17.1, a PTSD proclamation. It would be pretty difficult not to support this one. What's council, I'd like the motion, please, Deputy Clerk.
To support.
Motion to support by Deputy Clerk, seconded by Councillor Allen. Any questions on this one? Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. In the information package, you've got three pieces of correspondence. One regarding the report card on our EMCPA, and then two letters of thank you. Would any member councillor like something pulled out? Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
I'd just like to make the motion to receive all with thanks. I think they're all are good news.
And I see Fire Chief Brian has been waiting in this meeting, and two of them, Ted, certainly go to two of those thank you letters. Certainly go to members of you and members of your department, and the third one is a credit to the entire emergency committee that we have. So Deputy Clark has made the motion to receive the information package, seconded by Councillor Howie. All in favor? Carried. Ted, can you make sure that your staff and volunteers receive notice of those two letters of thank you?
I will do so, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Bonnie, go ahead.
yes, and I had said to receive with thanks, so please relay that council appreciates all the great work and the ambassadorship that they, when they do go to emergency calls within our municipality and as well as outside, how professional, and this speaks the accolades to that. So thank you on behalf of council.
Thank you very much.
Very good. All right. Does anybody have anything under other matters? Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Yes, just one thing with the COVID and the protocols that have to be put into place and the liabilities. Unfortunately, the Keene Farmers Market will again not proceed this season. It's we just don't feel comfortable at that point going ahead.
Completely unfortunate, but completely understandable.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody got anything else? Okay, well, thank you to members of council and staff. We got through another one. I just need a motion to adjourn. Powers and Allen. We are all in favor. Thank you very much. Thanks, Heather, Greg, Ted.